But before we get into that discussion, let's welcome back our wonderful panel, Bill and Brandy. Hello, Bill and Brandy. I want to put up Bill's Facebook. So if you want to reach out to Bill this week and talk to him about anything that he has, or even about his Bible study that he does on Wednesday nights, you can reach out to him at facebook.com/Bill and Barbara.Kaufman. Welcome, Bill. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. It's kind of a nice day in California as opposed to the last couple of weeks. It's really nice and warm. I kind of make fun of the people that live in the East Coast, especially the Northeast. I'm like, man, I can go out in the ocean right now. This is great.
Okay, I'm only 3 hours south of you, and I can't say it's warm. It is freezing in LA.
Really? Man, it's nice and warm here.
No, by my standard. But talk about freezing. Brandy's looking at us like, what are you talking about? Brandy is a publisher, author. She has On the Right Track. And you can reach out to her at facebook.com/On the Right Track, W Brandy Hunt. Brandy, welcome back. And so you're really on the East Coast, being in South Carolina. How's the weather for you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was 66 yesterday, but today it's like 52. I wasn't really happy about that. So I was in my t-shirt and my jogging pants, light jacket, and then today I walk out and I'm like, no, I don't like this. So yeah, but the sun is out, so I'm grateful for that. Where it's not snowing or anything major like that, so I shall not complain.
Well, that's all right. I know New York. I have relatives in New York, and they're about to either get the blizzard or they already have the blizzard. I'm not sure, but I know some, like my niece doesn't even have heat right now. Her hot water tank or whatever heating unit went out, and so she's freezing. But hopefully before the snow comes, they fix it. So we're going to discuss all the topics today that we can get in within the hour. And for those listening, feel free to join in, to chat, to comment. We'll put your chat comments on the screen and discuss it, and you can help gear our conversation as we discuss it. And for that person that chats the most, and good chats, it has to be something we can actually use, you will get a pick of merch. We have the I Love Truth Talk t-shirts. It can come also with black and white for the mail. We also have a mug, a tote bag, or a hat. So for that person who chats with us the most and gets that conversation going, I will send you a piece of merchandise on behalf of saying thank you. Last week, Rich Lamar, if you are listening, I never got that message from you, so we do owe you one of those. So just reach out to us this week if you would like to receive your merch. So let's go right into it. So this battle is over. I love this picture. You have President Trump, you have Vice President Mike Pence, and then you have President-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, Vice President-elect. That battle is over. But I think that picture, guys, it says so much. Nobody. They're so contentious. They're so, except for Trump, he's kind of snickering a little bit like y'all just foolish people, because he's above everybody else in that mindset. And he knows the game is being played. But everybody else just looks so unhappy. So how are they going to transition us? The states went ahead and certified the president election. And then the Electoral College certified Biden to be the president-elect. So here is, before we talk about President-elect Biden's comments on his address to the nation, I have one question. And that is, for 2 months, it has been a contentious battle with President Trump and his team, his advisors, his legal team, coming out on into the public, on mainstream media and other ways of media, to get his message out that, in his words, this election was rigged. He presented affidavits of testimonies from people supposedly at the election sites. He presented video of what looks like could be mishap. Um, how is it that in 2 months' time, in all of the court cases, not one shred of evidence, not one person, nothing was validated? I'm not that person that can wrap my head around that, because I get that maybe he was wrong, maybe he lost, correctly or incorrectly, but when you have a court case and you present so much facts, no facts was accepted in any state, in any circumstance, no matter what it was. I have a problem with that in a justice system, because if you're a Trump supporter, it looks like they just didn't hear his cases. If you're a Biden supporter, well, it looks like Trump just made everything up. But I have a hard time believing that a whole team of people decided to just lie to the American public. So there it is. I provoked it. I see the faces. Bill and Brandy, what's your comments?
Oh, Bill, you want me to take this one first?
Go ahead, Brandy.
If you've been watching this show any amount of time, you probably heard me say, I don't put nothing past our president. God bless his soul. But they working in the background. I don't put nothing past neither one of them. So I'm not saying if on either side. It seems so far fetched, but look at where we've come from in the last 200 years and how many times we have been lied to or finagled or not told all the truth. And then 10 years later, we find out, oh, by the way, there's a documentary on the truth. And so, it's unfortunate that we are pretty much getting probably a third of the truth. I'm not saying, I think that they are telling some truth. Who would really have time to sit there and come up with all of everything that needs to be done in so little time, if he really didn't really have some kind of proof. I don't feel like he's just a flat out, liar. I do believe that we twist things to make them be what we want them to be because we want to win. And I think that's our human nature, to lean it in our favor. I think the other question you asked was, how are they going to promote unity?
I'm going to save that one for in a minute. Don't answer that one yet. Before I hand it over to Bill, Dawn Smith asks, what is this? Hi, Dawn. This is a talk show where we discuss what's going on in the news and in our communities. And then we bring it into how does it reflect on us as Christians, and how can we be part of the solution instead of part of the division? So we're going to talk about all the issues, and then we're going to bring it into a conclusional state of what is our role as Christians, as believers in Christ, to bring people together and not be part of the division in this country. So I hope that answers your question, Dawn, and thank you for asking and joining us.
Yeah, and Dawn, we do appreciate that. And I think what it is also, we're trying to come from a bit of different perspectives. Brandy and I are quite a few years apart. She's 2 decades younger than me. We live on different coasts. There's quite a few differences, but you know what is the same with Brandy and I is we both love Jesus, and that's the same. And so we always harken back. Now, Melanie and I have been friends for a long, long time, and we're both West Coast people. Well, she's been both. I actually been both too. I used to live in North Carolina, but that was a long time ago. I'm a California person and born and raised here. So, but we come from different places, different perspectives on stuff. But ultimately, I think what we're really trying to get through is what is important. Now, I think the presidency is important. I absolutely do. In fact, I know it is. It's super important. But it's not as important as eternity.
Right.
It's not. And it's not as important. And I don't believe it's important in God's sight that I care so much about who the president is, care so much about who you are, Dawn. That's the key. Do I care about Dawn as a human being? Well, the Holy Spirit lives inside me, then I do. And it's that simple. And do I care about Brandy? And does Brandy care about me? And Melanie care about Brandy? And so on and so forth. Yes. And that's the key. Now, that being said, we're talking about current events. because they are important. They're not unimportant. And in fact, they're very important. Now, you asked the question, this is certainly the craziest election I've ever seen. And I've been paying attention to it a long time. 2000 was a pretty crazy election, but this one trumps it completely. And I don't mean Donald Trump. I mean, it's just a term, but I mean, this is crazy. Now, the only thing that really made me really sit there and say, what in the world, was when they stopped counting at, in the evening of the election in a few states. All these states that got turned were all very strong Trump, especially Pennsylvania. That thing was like 700,000 votes. When they started counting again, everything turned. It turned quickly. And I know the argument is like, oh, well, those are all absentee ballots. Well, it wasn't just Democrats that voted absentee. So I don't see how you can, that means 9 out of 10 ballots that came in after that were all the other way. That, I'm sorry, if it was the shoe was on the other foot, I don't care. I'm not saying Donald Trump won. I'm saying if you were a Biden supporter and you saw that, you would also say, this is really weird. Why is this one different than anyone in all of history? Well, that's all the Trump supporters are saying, is why is this different than anyone in history? And why isn't anybody asking that question except for us and the Trump supporters? And if it was the other way, I really believe that Biden supporters say, this is different than any time in history. What gone on? There's something crazy. Why isn't anybody asking questions but us? And that's what the
let me ask you this, because you brought up a good point, because the media wants to say it's Republicans against Democrats. Even worse, it's Trump supporters versus Biden supporters. But isn't it the fact that in our human nature, and we talked about this a little bit before we got on, is that the winners accept the win and those who are losing challenge the loss? That's just what it is. So if Biden had the same situation, but he was on the losing team, he would probably say, wait, something's different. This is wrong. We got to, seek all these avenues for justice. And if Trump won, he certainly wouldn't have done all he did to try to prove why he won, because
Correct.
We don't do that in our human nature. So it's not about Trump versus Biden. It really should be about the system to which the voting is counted, watched, and relayed back to the government. Isn't that the only core problem, is that the system is broken or the system has holes in it? Because Trump or Biden, the loser was going to contest it. Didn't matter who it was.
That's true. And they even said that they were. But my thing from the Christian point of view now, that's from the political point of view. And I have a political bias. I do. And I don't pretend I don't. But my guy, I always say this, in my lifetime, my guys won about half the time. The other guys won about the other half the time. And that's just it. And I'm not too worked up about it one way or the other, because I'm afraid that I'm looking to eternity. And I really do believe God's hands involved with everything. And I pray. I know other people do too. And I do everything I can to affect things politically, because I actually am involved politically. But that being said, it isn't the be all to end all. And anything I cannot control, I learned this as a young man, really. I learned this in the Army when I was young. Everything you can be in control of and you're responsible for, worry about it and do everything you can to do it the best you can. But if it's out of your control, don't even put your mind on it. So if I'm a fire team leader, I'm an E5 fire team leader, and I've got to attack this one element, I need to concentrate all on that. I cannot worry about what the overall military is going to do and how they're going to coordinate the Marines with the Army, with the Air Force, and the Navy. I can't worry about that. I've got a fire team that I'm in charge of, and I'm attacking one element. It's what I have to pay attention to, or I'm going to mess it up. And so if I was in charge of the whole thing, then I would concern myself with all this other stuff. But since I'm not, I can't.
Right.
Because I have no effect on it anyway. Even if I worried about it all day long and all night long, doesn't change any outcomes. So I want to put my mind on things like the future. And by the way, I said this when Trump was president, and I said it when Obama was president and when Bush was president. And actually when Clinton was president. Pray for the person in office that they would actually start listening to God. I don't care who they are, because it doesn't matter to me who they are. Now, they may never listen to God, but I pray that could happen. Change their heart, cause them to listen, cause them to make decisions that are going to be good for, the country, for good for what God wants for us humans and all that kind of stuff. And short of that, I can't do much more. Because if I called him up right now, either one of them, and said, "Hi, this is Bill. Hey, did you watch that game last night?" They're not taking my call.
Right. I like how you said, it depends on where you are in the structure to how effective you can be in the big goal. We do our part as far as locally what we can do with our local government that affects the larger government of the United States. But like you said, we can't go into the White House and demand our viewpoint. We just can't do that. But President-elect Joe Biden addressed the nation last night, and he said that this was a battle for the soul of America, and that we, the people, voted, that he had faith in our institutions that held the integrity of our elections. And he said this: now is the time to turn the page, to unite, and to heal. Now, President Trump came out and said this: he refuses to concede to the Electoral College. This election is rigged, and it's the most corrupt election in United States history. So I have a comment about when our leaders are so divided and the people are looking towards their leader. Brandy, I'm going to throw this to you because I know you're such an avid Biden supporter. So I'm going to throw this to you. How does Biden begin to heal and unite when there are so many people that feel like this was rigged? This was a corrupt election. How can he overcome that? Or will he even try to overcome that?
I guess in my personal opinion, I would have to do it like the ER would do an emergency. They would take death, something that somebody's like near death, over somebody that has a paper cut. And so they would have to look at the big picture. Okay, your guy didn't win, but what is it that you want that guy would have given you? Because ultimately, we're just shells of people. Our soul, and so the words they use to restore the soul of the nation, the soul of the nation is very deep. It's not just about someone that didn't get elected or got elected. Our soul has been crying out for years, and it's different issues that are going on. So I guess they would need to really address the pain of the nation versus the pain of November, because that's new. That's still really a paper cut in the big picture and the big scheme of what's really wrong with America.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brandy. And I look, whether you voted for him or not, if he's going to be the president, he's got a rough road to hoe. I don't really like the way the press treated Donald Trump. So therefore, I'm not going to do the same thing to Joe Biden. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say, well, you treated this guy that way, so I'm going to treat you this way. No. We're adults here. And I'm going to pray for him. I'm going to support him when I can. I don't have to agree with him. And by the way, nobody has to agree with any politician. Now, I mean, if he does things that, here's probably the biggest thing, not just him. Republicans do it all the time. Democrats do it. Lifelong politicians do it. And he's been a lifelong politician. He's actually never done anything else. He became a politician in the 70s, and he's been a politician his whole life. He's never done anything other than that. And they're really good at looking at you and saying, look, it's time you and I just messed everything up.
That's all right.
Bill,
let's see if I can get it back. But what I was saying is that he has a, well, let's see. I got to fix it. Sorry.
All right, you fix that. And I'm going to talk while you fix that. So, and I agree, we'll get back to what he wanted to say once he gets upright. I think he's there already.
I'm sorry. All I meant was real quick. I'll just do it real quick. politicians are really good, Democrats or Republicans, are really good at looking you in the eye and telling you what you want to hear, and then doing whatever they want to do. I admit that the last 4 years has been a guy that's not a politician. He says whatever's on his mind. He says whatever he's thinking. Probably not a good idea, but he does it anyway. But now we're back to what we've had all my life, except for probably in the 80s, where we've got somebody who just, because everybody else does this. What's going to be the best way for me to say this so that I don't offend the most people? How can I not offend people, even though you may be stabbing them in the back? Like, I'm going to take your business and I'm going to ruin it, and I'm going to give it to somebody else, and I'm going to make you like it. Well, how do I do that? Well, I do it with a smile, and I do it with a nice statement, and how much I care for you, and all these other things. I've heard that my whole life from politicians. I feel your pain. I love you. I care for you. They don't care for you one bit. By the way, that's not Democrats or Republicans. That's both of them, with very few exceptions. There's probably a few, but most of them don't care any after you vote for them. They're just going to do what they want to do. That's normal. I think we just went back to normal, though, and I do believe we're going to get a lot of nice speeches and nice words and nice things, but pay attention to what's going on underneath, because I'm sorry, we've got China to deal with, and that's financial, and that's a big deal. We've got, if they raise taxes too much, the money's gone because they go overseas. It just happens. It happens every time. Then that's a problem for the people like me, a normal person that's just a working person, not for the rich. The rich are fine no matter what, but they'll still look you in the eye and say, I got your best interest at heart, when they may be just padding their own pocket. And that's not just Biden. I'm not picking on him. I'm just saying we're going to go back to that now, where nobody's going to investigate too much, and they're just going to smile and wave like the penguins of Madagascar. That's my fear.
Well, I agree. I agree that, with both of you guys, now that we have a president-elect and it is Biden, we, as a member of Christ, we support him. We pray for him and his team. We pray for the transition of America. But we also have to be looking and watching. How is he going to change things that do affect us? We have to be wise in that matter. We can't just be like, oh, it's Biden and Trump's out, so let's just ignore the politics now, because we're not going to have that angry battle back and forth. We're not going to have that insult of the day on the news. Things might actually calm down to politics as usual pre-Trump. But that means we need to be more active in seeing what is going on behind the scenes, what is being put into the bills that are being, approved. But for me, how do we get unity? I don't think the president-elect is going to be able to give us unity.
No.
I think it comes by me and by you, Bill, and by Brandy. We have to decide that people can have their own viewpoints, their opinions, and I can get along with them. It starts with this, me and my community being unified, saying, you know what, the election is over. The court cases are over. The Electoral College has spoken. We have a new president. Let's just get on board. Let's do a fresh start with everybody, with each other. And then we can be unified as a country.
I think that it'll never be completely unified. It never was. My father told me when I was a kid, and this was during the Nixon, when he was having all the troubles, and then he put Ford, he resigned, then Ford became president. But I remember this conversation. He said, I don't know how anybody ever wants to be president, because half the country hates you. That was way back then, not changed. Yeah. Half the country hates you no matter what. And that's the reason I haven't run for president. Well, that I'd never get elected.
That's the only reason?
That's the only reason. No, but the reality is that's true. So we're not going to completely be unified. I understand that. But this is what I was talking about a politician, is now I can see this. The current group of politicians are going to get up on television and give their speeches, and it's going to be how wonderful everything is now, and everybody's on the same side, and we all now agree that I'm the guy, and we all love me. That's never true. Never was true. Never going to be true. The last 4 years has not been that way. It's been it's been the opposite. It's been the antithesis, that just fighting all the time. Well, maybe that's bad. But is it also maybe, there's a scripture in the Bible that says really bad are the kisses of an enemy. And what it meant was, kisses meaning a good thing, like I really care for you, I love you, but it's an enemy. They don't mean it. They do not mean it. So politics as usual, as you said, Melanie, isn't always good, because that's the way politicians do things. They are sometimes the kiss of an enemy, and that's a really bad thing. And so, look, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm no prophet. I'm praying for the guy and for the whole transition team and for America. And as a soldier and a cop, I would give my life for him right now if somebody tried to harm him. Okay? Because that's my job, and I believe in it. I was a soldier and I'm a cop. I would absolutely lay down my life for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They are our leaders. I would do it in a second. And I don't have to vote for people, and I don't even have to agree with them, but I do have to do that. And I believe in that. So,
and I agree with that. And it's not going to be all rose-colored glasses. I know that that's what's going to be said is, oh, everything's getting back to normal. Everything's going to be great. Finally, we have a president that is going to fix all our problems. That is not possible. But that segues me to our next conversation, which is COVID vaccine. I love this picture. Look at this picture. There's the first 2 Americans that I'm understanding that got vaccinated under the COVID vaccine. And it said that the nurse there in this picture right here, she said she can now see the light. It's the end of the tunnel coming, and the light is now here to ending COVID and ending all the quarantine and the masks and all of that. There's also, I watched probably 30 interviews of healthcare worker after healthcare worker, politician after politician saying the same sentence. I see the light. So that's what they're trying to get everybody to understand, that now that we have this vaccine, we see the light, and it's the end to all that we have been living like. However, my understanding is that we're still needing to be quarantined. We're still needing to wear masks. We're still needing to be 6 feet apart. So the vaccine, is it really the whole I see the light, or is it just verbiage to get people to come on board?
Smoke and mirrors. Yes, that's what I believe. I believe it is. But I'm also, it's my disclaimer, I'm not a believer in all vaccines. But however, I do know that they work. People take the flu vaccine every year and it works great for them. I just disagree with this one, because this is the one that say you get an ounce of COVID in your body and you could just be deadly. I mean, so for me, if you're making a vaccine with the deadly virus, and I guess it just doesn't make enough sense to me yet to take it to be protected, and you're not even sure if it's protecting people or killing more people.
And I want to show this because we did go over this last week, and just how the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine is done. They take the spike, which is the part of the protein that infects people of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is COVID-19. And that is made into a nice package with special molecules and injected into your cells. And the idea is that these cells, that mRNA, will produce your antibodies without hurting the person who took them. So you're right. I just don't want anybody to say, oh, that's not how it's done. No, this is a live spiked part of the virus that this is made into. So I understand that. And, I want to talk about the caution. United Kingdom, they had their rollout last week, and it was very successful by all means, according to what we know now. But there was a warning for those people who have allergic reactions, who get into anaphylactic shock by having injections or medications or very heavy allergies where you have to carry around an EpiPen. And they said, warning, if you're in that category, you need to be cautious about this. So I haven't heard the United States in their propaganda to roll this out say anything about the cautionary part of being sensitive to things like this. And for me, just personally, that's very important. Myself, I am allergic to so many medications that my doctors do not even put me on anymore, because if it's a 1% chance of getting this reaction, I'm getting that 1%. Same thing with my two daughters, because we have a genetic mutation that affects the female side of our immune system. So if there's a 1% chance of doing it, it's going to happen. My youngest took a vaccine about 6 months ago. She almost died from that vaccine. She is still taking medications to try to undo the damage to her muscles and nerves by just a regular vaccine. So I think it's negligent for the United States not to heed the warning from the UK to say, hey, if there's people like my family who have a genetic component that you shouldn't take it, why are they warning us? Because my daughter works in the medical field. She's one of the ones front lines people to get it. So why aren't they warning us that this is a problematic issue? Because my daughter works in the medical field.
By the way, I think I was off for a little bit. I didn't hear that last line. Could you say that again, Melanie? I was off for a minute.
Yeah, I don't understand. I think it's negligent for United States to roll this out without any warning for people who have severe issues with immunizations or medications and allergic reactions. After the UK rolled out successfully, but they did say, here's an issue. This is what we learned. Why aren't we being warned of that very fact?
Well, I'm going to say that, and it's just my opinion, and it's not necessarily based on anything, just but me paying attention this year so much, is that this is a disease that's very political. It's not a disease. It's just sickness oriented. The numbers being reported were as much to drive public opinion as to inform it, maybe more so. And so since it's become a political football, as it were, and it just has, I mean, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. And it's definitely a real thing, and it's a real disease, and you have to treat it as such. But I mean, we have other diseases that are very violent, very deadly, and everything else, and they don't have the same political hot buttons that this one has. So I think that would be the answer to that, is that, I watched Bill Gates this morning. I think it was from last night, but I watched him it was from Sunday, but I watched the show today, where he was on television talking about because he's really into the vaccine. He's trying to promote it really big time. And he was saying, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but don't get your hopes too up. You're not going to be able to take the masks off, or we need to close down businesses at least till the summer. And when I hear a billionaire say we need to close down mom and pop stores, I think, are you serious? Okay, it's not going to hurt you. You have $27 billion in the bank. Mom and pop, they had 27,000 in the bank when this started. They're a negative 52,000 now, still trying to struggle. And you're telling them, nope, I know we let you open last month, but now we got to close you again, even though we're getting the vaccine that we told you would fix these things. That has nothing to do with the vaccine to me. What that had to do to me was elite people in power with a lot of money, looking at people like you and me who just are surviving, if we're even surviving, and saying, yeah, you'll be fine. And it's an old thing, but when Marie Antoinette said that they came to her, this is back in Louis XVI, the French Revolution, apparently this really happened, and they said the people are starving. And she said, well, let them eat cake. Shortly thereafter, she didn't have a head because they chopped off her and her husband's head. And then Robespierre took over, and eventually that led to Napoleon. But that was a quick little thing about the French Revolution. But she said something, let them eat cake. And every time I listen to our governor, or Bill Gates or any of these other people that are wealthy beyond imagination, and I'm happy for them. I'm glad you're wealthy. That's good for you. But most people aren't, and they can't afford 6 more months of not working, and you might give them a $1,200 check. You can't do that. You can't do it. So all I'm saying is this a lot of Marie Antoinette up there in charge saying, let them eat cake, and they're not paying attention to how much pain and sorrow the average human being is going to suffer. Now, I'm working as a cop, so honestly, I'm not suffering. I got a lot of jobs, but a lot of work. But I do know a lot of people are. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Brandy, I want to go back to you with the immunizations before we talk about this relief proposal or lack thereof. What do you think about the fact that they're really promoting, I'll go back to this picture, African Americans to get the vaccine? And I didn't call on that because of your race. I just wanted to go back to this. But I showed this picture to a bunch of people yesterday, and every African American I showed it to said, wow, they're really trying to push this on us. Every Caucasian person, and I haven't asked Bill, didn't understand that there was anything political about this picture. They were like, oh, that's great. People are getting the vaccine. They didn't see color. So help me out, Brandy. Is this about rolling out and trying to get African Americans to be the first in line? Or is this just seeing color where there isn't?
I'm gonna go with there's an agenda. What the agenda is and why, I don't know. But because I'm in sales and marketing, you use what your client is going to relate to. So if I see a Black woman, I'm going to relate to the Black woman in the picture. That's just that's the art of marketing. And so the target audience has become the African American population. But why? Okay, so back in March, when everything kind of blew off, I did remember hearing because our health is not as good as other Americans, and they really didn't say white or whatever. It was just like African Americans have the poorest health. Well, it wasn't just because we don't eat right. That was one factor, but we also don't have access to the same health care. We also don't have health care insurance. So there was so many other factors to why the disease was killing more African Americans than other. Now, I did not go do the fact check, and I don't know if that's really true as far as how many people have died from it, but I do remember them in March saying this is affecting the African American population more because they have poor health.
And I will say this, I do believe that the African American population, just as far as what I've experienced, I am mixed. I have a white side that is completely Caucasian, and I have a Black side that's completely Black, and they don't mix. My African American family, well, they weren't from Africa, so they're just American Black people. But they got sicker and died at a vast majority rate than my Caucasian, side of the family. Same part of the country. So it wasn't about country issues. But that reminded me very quickly about a TV show I watched, because I've been trying to research on this. But there's a TV show, I think it was Grey's Anatomy. If you look at Grey's Anatomy, the way they are handling this pandemic, it is so the experience that I think many of us who have dealt with health issues have experienced, and it's a good depiction of it. But the doctors got really angry because it was one after the other. It was an African American dying, an older African American dying, a younger African American dying, pregnant women dying, but they were African American. He said, this isn't a disease that targets Black people, but because of the way the United States is organized, it's the African American culture that doesn't have the health care. They can't afford Whole Foods doesn't exist in the African American community. It just doesn't. You can't get the health care. Doctors treat you differently. All right. They treat you so differently. And so it's because of all of the points that we live by differently, by a different set of rules, a different set of abilities and opportunities. It affects the African American more. I didn't mean to go that long with that.
With that being said, do you think that that is the reason that they're doing that? Like you said your Caucasian friends wouldn't have noticed. Honestly, it didn't even occur to me. I didn't notice either one of those people. Right now, I don't even know if it's a male or female, either one. I don't know, except for I know one of them there. Okay, somebody's black because you were telling me that. I wouldn't have noticed. But that's just because I was born in the 60s, raised in the 70s and 80s. I'm not supposed to notice, to be honest with you. And I don't care one bit what color anybody is. I do not give a hoot. I think everybody's related to Noah, and I don't care. But apparently some other people notice it. Do you think that marketing is due to that? Be saying, hey, there's a bigger problem in the African American community, so let's market it toward it.
Yes.
I actually remember this, though. This is when they first started talking about putting kids back in school, and this was in Oregon. And they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put in the African American, Latino Americans. We're going to give them the first shot at education again before any Caucasians or Asians, because they're not doing as well in school. And as soon as they said that, the first thing I thought of was, are you using them as guinea pigs? I mean, what are you talking about?
Yes.
That was the first thing. And this was super liberal people who were like, they're actually trying to help. I actually believe they really came up with this plan to help. Okay. I really do think that. But I know how it could be totally looked at totally the opposite way. Like, oh, you're just using me as a guinea pig. And then when we get COVID, look at you. And then we stop going to school. You tested it on us. Man, when you start dividing everybody between race and sex or height or color of eyes or whatever, once you think they are just as love the country and American as I am, there's no difference in that. We may just look at things a little different economically or different things here or there. That's it. I'm not different. I'm a male, white male. Brandy is a African American female. We're 20 years apart, but we're not, even though there's differences. I don't want to not notice it. That's the wrong word. I don't want to concentrate on that. I want to concentrate on what we're the same as and build something together. Quit dividing everybody, because that just causes everybody to be so suspicious. And if you point out everything that's wrong in the world, and you can, because there's a lot wrong in the world, then it can cause you to literally hate people who disagree with you. And that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think, I just want to say this. I don't think it's about race. I think it's about the parents who aren't going to make the most fuss, the parents who don't have the money to complain, the parents who don't have the money to sue. That's why you're going to put in the Hispanic and the Black.
By the way, they didn't do it. I just want to say that plan never came to fruition.
There really was a plan.
But it was a plan.
They had a lot of uproar about it. So it stopped. But this is what I want to say is we need to know this vaccine, it's working for some people, we guess. The pre-trials say it's wonderful. It really is a wonderful thing to get. If you have sensitivities with your immune system, sensitivities to drug interactions, you need to talk to your doctor before you take this, because UK came out and gave instance. And like I said, UK had a positive rollout from what we know, but they did give that strong warning. And there was only 2 instances out of all that they rolled out that we understand, but it was enough of a scare for them that they did try to warn the United States to put a disclaimer on there. But what I want to say is this, we know your rights. I found this map and it might help us. I don't know if you're for vaccine or not vaccine, but here's a map. And the states like California is just medical exemptions only. If you don't want to get a vaccination, you must have a medical exemption. You must have it verified in your medical record that you have intolerance to vaccines or certain medications repeatedly. Then you have some, I'm not good, like Florida, that color is religious exemptions. Most states do have religious exceptions for vaccines. I don't know if this fits into that because it's a crisis. It's a national health crisis. I don't know that you can get a religious exemption for that. So I just want to show that map that there is exceptions in almost every state. Know your state if you feel like you need to be exempted from this. Get your paperwork, your documents in order now, because when they come to you and say, okay, it's your turn, you're on that tier, especially if you're in the workforce, learn from your job now. Hey, when the vaccines come, what am I required to do to keep my job? Because there's going to be certain jobs that have what we talked about last week. We talked about this. What was it? The IBM Digital Health Pass. Some jobs and workplaces, airlines, they can require that you have a health pass that shows a vaccination. Just get educated now. It doesn't have to be a big uproar, but just say, hey, when it comes out, are you going to require me to have it? Because I just want to know where I stand, so I know what choice to make and how to prepare. I don't think it's something we need to be afraid of. I just think we still have the right to choose what we put into our body.
Brandy, you said you're not against all vaccinations, but you're not all for vaccinations either. And so that's, I think, a reasonable position to take. Personally, I kind of agree with you, although I'm probably not as anti-vax. I'm not anti-vax, but I think we've overdone it to some degree. I remember, just the chicken pox, they're trying to give our kids a chicken pox vaccine. I'm like, just go get around a kid with chicken pox. It doesn't hurt them. It's just irritating for a couple of days and then they're fine. But at the same time, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but this is fast. This is never in the history has anything come out so quickly. And maybe to the credit, maybe I'll give credit to everything for it. But it is quick. It is awfully quick. And so I can see why people are scared. Yes, Brandy, please.
Do we really know that it's quick, though? How do we know that they haven't been working on this? It's on the Lysol can. It says the defense against COVID. It's another number, but it was COVID. It wasn't 19, but it does say COVID. And so how do we really know that they just came up with this all of a sudden and haven't really been working on something in the background because they knew it was coming?
And there have been articles and videos out stating that they've been working on a COVID vaccine for years, for decades, but it wasn't catered to this COVID-19. They had to adjust it to this, and it wasn't ready for rollout. So again, we can't go where I want to go because that's a whole show.
I think the biggest fear I have is not, and I always keep harkening back to this, I know, but it's a big deal to me. And I know it's a big deal to a lot of people. The vaccine may be the best idea in the world, and I may be front in line, okay? But freedom is a bigger idea to me. Freedom is more important to me than my health. Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me, I'll take death over tyranny any day. And yes, I will. And I've had people say, you would actually rather get sick and die. I go, then lose my freedom? Yeah, absolutely I would. And it's not even a close call. I'd much rather be free. But that being said, that being said, my biggest fear isn't the vaccine. It's really not. My biggest fear is taking people's liberty from them and telling them you have to do what we say, because that's the reason that all those Europeans left for this new land in the first place. Now, did they get it all right? No. When they started it off, they started it a little bit more free and a little more and a little more. And, we're still on that path to trying to become more free. I hate giving that back to where we got lords and serfs again, where we got these people here telling the rest of us what we're going to do, and we don't have a choice. I'm against that because I'm for liberty, not tyranny. And I know you say, well, that's an intellectual argument. In a real world, this is what we really have to deal with. I understand that. And I actually even agreed to some degree, except this. Freedom has never been part of the human experiment until a couple hundred years ago. Hasn't been there. And even though we don't have it perfect, and I'm not saying it's perfect because it's not complete, it's not the way it should be, but I can tell you what, it's a lot better than it was in 1232 in any country in the world, or in 1829, or in 703 BC. None of those years did the human experience give freedom to the average person, and we have it right now to some degree. I don't want to give it back.
Right.
And I think I think, so just to say, just agree with you, I am not a vaccinator. I think that there are some chemicals in vaccines that we just don't need to put into our body. But I also have the personal experience of vaccines going wrong due to what now we know is a genetic issue. So I've had very poor vaccine um, experiences with my kids. When they were young, getting vaccinated, they winded up sick. They winded up in the hospital. Nobody knew why. They lost senses for a little bit of time. Now, 24 years later, we understand the genetic code that prohibits us from being able to do that. But when they were young, what I don't like is the judgment on those who don't get vaccinated. Yeah, I take my kids into school and have doctors report saying they can't get vaccinated, and their teens because of such adverse reactions. It's a legitimate medical reason, but they're seen as, well, you're just going to expose everybody. You're being irresponsible. I am against the attitude that people who vaccinate have against those unvaccinated, even if there's a reason for that. So that's my issue with vaccines, is there's no freedom of choice on that. And it's not respected when one makes that choice. And I think that's what's wrong with this vaccine as well. The majority of the people that I talk to, they're not afraid of the vaccine, okay, because the pre-trials work and they have good numbers. But one, they haven't been followed through very well. The trial people are still going to be followed for at least 5 more years, they said in the studies. So we got 5 more years to find out what this really does long term to people. So we're pretty much doing a whole national trial, a worldwide trial, to see where it goes and how it affects us. But
that Bill Gates, Melanie, Bill Gates said that too. When I was listening to him, he said, a lot of Americans just want Americans to be vaccinated and not worry about the rest of the world. We need to vaccinate everyone. And I was like, it was the same argument as Oregon. I go, yeah, why don't you go, okay, Bill, why don't you go experiment with third world countries and see how it works? Is that what you're saying? I just thought that was really, I know they're not saying it. I know that, but it was, my silly brain goes, what are you talking about? Because we don't know what this
it's all an experiment. Now, but I think it's an experiment. If you look at the good side of people, it's an experiment to get us back to some kind of normalcy, to get everybody working. If you look at the politician and the political side, it's an experiment of control and experiment of, we're getting class systems back. The poor is getting poorer, the middle class is gone, and the richer are getting richer for this. And so you have no mom and pop stores that are staying open, but Walmart continually can stay open no matter what happens. I don't understand. The mom and pops disinfect better. They can watch the people coming in their store at a better rate than Walmart can. But you keep Walmart open.
And Melanie, it's political.
It is political.
It's super political. So because we've got a friend of ours, that actually a relative, who's opposite of me politically, but he's very vocal. He's a lot more vocal than I am about things completely. And when that hey, why are Amazon and Walmart the only things you can go to? These people are super wealthy. What about mom and pop stores? And literally the answer back, I still don't understand it, but the answer back from this fella, who's my first cousin, he says, it's because we're not for the rich guy. And he hates Republicans. He goes, Republicans are just for the rich and wealthy. Wealthy people like the mom and pops who are ripping me off. I buy it cheaper at Walmart, and they're trying to rip me off, and they're wealthy, and I'm against them. And I was like, what? We honestly couldn't even
I don't mean to
fathom.
laugh,
But once again, when you perceive everything through politics, when that's the only thing you filter things through, then I'm afraid that's probably a fairly common response. But I think it's pretty reasonable to say I'd rather have mom and pop stores getting my money than I would
well,
anything.
and I'm going to throw this out too. And I'm going to throw this out, and we're not going to stay there because we're going to go on. We got a few minutes left. I want to talk about the relief proposal. But, I'm just going to throw this out. It has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. But there's so much uproar about the medical needs of the rise in COVID. However, I know medical staff that have been laid off in just the last 2 weeks. There's not enough work for CMAs and nurses. So that contradicts everything I'm hearing in the news. Why do I know medical staff that's not working? They're laid off, not enough work, not enough sick people. If the hospitals were so overused, why don't they pull the medical staff into the hospitals? Why are people now without paycheck that are medically qualified to handle? I don't understand that. I want to show this comment from Emancipation. Blessings from Kingston, Jamaica. One love. Hello, Kingston, Jamaica. Thank you, Emancipation, for joining us, and blessings to you too. And yes, one love. You're all the way in Jamaica. We're here in the United States. Hope you are well. Hope you are staying safe, and may God bless you. I want to show this graphic. Here is what I understand is the latest COVID-19 relief proposal, $908 billion. Unemployment and small businesses will get some of that. Vaccine deployment, because we can't live without that. And food assistance to those new to the food bank lines. Now, two things really get me on this. And that is, one is, why is the COVID relief fund, instead of giving all the money to the American people who can't pay their bills, who have thousands of dollars worth of power bills unpaid, they can't pay it, don't have food, whatever. Why is part of our relief bill getting the COVID vaccine out? Isn't that funded in other ways? Why is that part of our relief bill? I'm not understanding that. But the wording when they said the food assistant was for those who find themselves in new food lines that have never been there before. We must educate them on how to do it. It was for educating people on how to be in a food bank line. See the silence? That's all you could do. I'm not understanding this.
And I will tell you years ago, Melanie, whenever they gave the omnibus quite a few $1 billion, and they gave most of it to banks to bail them out and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It was quite a few $1 trillion, I think, even. I don't remember the number, so I don't want to overstep it, but it was billions at least. And they gave most of the money to banks, and then they gave each person a little bit of cash, okay, that stood in line. If you stood in line and you got a little bit of money, but it wasn't much money, and for every individual. But then they just took and divided it up, that much money of every adult American, and it was a substantial amount. I mean, it wasn't a lot, but it was a few $1,000s. Instead of giving it directly to the banks and this, and it's going to be that way all the time because the individual isn't going to support these political funds. I hate to sound so cynical, but a politician goes and takes all your money, says, I'm going to give it back to you, but they actually give it to the bank, or they give it to the store, or they give it to the business. And I'm all pro-business, but I don't think the government should be giving them money. And they give it to them, who will then turn and support their PAC.
Right.
So it's a wash each other's back scenario, scratch each other's back scenario. And that sounds so cynical, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see them wanting to give the individual too much. I see them wanting to give an institution something, because that institution can then turn around and support you as the politician. That's what I think. So maybe I'm wrong. Sounds awful cynical even when I say it.
It sounds horrible. But Brandy, do you agree that if they wanted to give the people money, we'd just have it in our bank account like we did the first $1,200? It would just be given. It wouldn't have to be mixed in with all this other stuff mixed in. It listen, you stopped millions of people from working. You left them with no income, no way to get anything.
Yeah, I mean, for me, everybody would have an EBT card with about $3,000 on it. I mean, because if you give money, that actually, you don't know where the people went and bought televisions. That doesn't necessarily say they're going to pay their bills. But if you are really trying to help people, pay the power company on behalf of, you know, pay $100 towards everybody's power bill. People losing they power, and really life stuff that we really need. So for me, the fixes really aren't fixes. And Bill, it was $3,000. I remember being so happy. It was $3,000, and that was only for a bailout. So you saying for a whole virus out here, we only get 1,200, and that was nearly. I mean, I lost my job, and my husband lost his job, ex-husband. Let me throw that out there for anybody who may be watching. My ex-husband, and so my ex-husband and I lost our job like a week apart. And so that $3,000 literally came, at the nick of time. But so you're talking about just a bailout because the economy was failing, but we have actually people getting sick, can't work, businesses closing down. Saying, did the man with the bar, did they end up making him close down?
I don't know. That's a
Yeah,
good
I mean,
point.
just come and say, hey, you just can't. Like, I'm fully able to show up at work, but the doors of the church are closed. You cannot come in here. And so it's like the dynamics are totally different, but it's like you want to give less now, but you have the ability to go shake the money tree and make it happen.
Yeah, and it's not that we're, like Bill so many times have said, we can't just print money because it's going to have an effect. It will cause a recession or something like that, right? That Bill knows these answers. But we have to do something to negate or to counteract the loss. And I love, hey, pay the bill. The power company here in Los Angeles has said they will not turn people's power off if you don't pay it and you have been affected by COVID. And I think that is a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, they put out a notice saying that for those who did by accident get their power cut off and they've been off for 30 days, they're working on getting them back on as soon as possible.
30, that's a long time.
That's a long time to be without power. 30 days. That means, how do you cook? So you can't afford to eat out because obviously you couldn't afford to pay your power. So even buying small foods, you can't even cook it in your house. And it's getting cold. So, it's good that the power companies are saying, hey, we're not going to shut you off, but there needs to be more for the American people. And we're out of time for today. We are. Brandy, thank you so much. Bill, thank you so much. And I want to leave us with this closing thought. It is the holiday season, and there is so much to divide us in America and across the world. Even in your family, let us try to be different in Christ, be different than those that don't know that our main focus should be Jesus and his love for each other and the word of God and caring for one another. We are our brother's keepers. And when we see someone hurting, we need to be able to help. We need to be willing to help. And when we have someone who doesn't agree with our politics or how this election has worked its way out, then we need to be able to be silent and concede that everyone's allowed to have their own opinions. That's how we can be different and how we can sow, just peace within our family, our friends, our workplaces, and our community. Let's put the differences aside. Let's celebrate the holidays, and let's meet again next week on Truth Talk. Right, Brandy?
Right.
I really appreciate it. And don't forget, this whole week we have Bill Kaufman joins me tomorrow on a one-on-one Truth Talk conversation. That is very exciting. Get to hear about Bill and where he wants what he wants to be doing in the near future. get to hear, I don't know what we're going to talk about. But then Wednesday, we're going to go into the 7 churches of Revelation Bible study and the 5 points that Jesus spoke to the churches and how do they relate to us. And then Friday, we're going to talk about a message. How do you live so that the Lord will defend you? There is so much, Brandy and Bill, so much coming against us, so much wickedness and unrighteousness. How do we live so that the Lord defends us? We're going to talk about that Friday. But until then, Brandy, love you.
Love you
Bill
too.
is already gone, but love you, Bill. Thank you so much. And Bill, I'll see you tomorrow at 2:00 here on Truth Talk, a Conversation. Have a good week.
Bye.